Good morning, folks. I'm a little out of practice doing this. Also, I realize you're kind of down there. I'll have to lift that up. Hi. Hi, welcome. Come on in. How are you doing? Good. Some tea for us. Andrea, hi. Hi. Welcome. I'm so happy to be back. Happy New Year. Did you make some Astragalus tea in preparation for class? If not, that's fine, because you can make it afterwards. Make it afterwards and watch again. Here's some tea for you. And then there's a monograph and if you want an herb journal, there you go. So just saying, I'm a little out of practice with all of this. So when we're in class here, we have a plant monograph. You're wintering in Florida. Oh, okay. Well, when you get some astragalus, you can try it out. So in class, we have a monograph, which is a complete kind of compilation of the botany, the chemistry, the energetics, traditional uses, clinical studies, the physiology, dosing strategies, all of that stuff is in the monograph. And then what we also have, and I encourage you to do this anytime that you are working with a plant. Greetings from Toronto. Hi, Toronto. Lola, hi. Hi, Happy New Year. Hi, Mickey. So we also have an herb journal. I'll figure out how to link to documents like this so y'all can download these. I don't know how, but I've got the internet and I can figure out how. But it's helpful to have a journal like this. Do you use this form, or do you have a kind of a form that you've created on your own?
My notes are all over the place. Usually, like every time I am using something as an ingredient, I go back and I write stuff.
Yeah.
All over again.
Yeah. Well, and that's the value, is that those layers and layers, you get this historical document of your relationship with it. What I do want to point out is this is a journal page that I made because I have a very linear brain and I like to fill in forms. And so for me, this works. I'll bring it up kind of close so you can see. It's just a way to collect the experience that we do in class. Yeah, hi, Shadi. Yeah, I was just saying I'm going to figure out how to put this online so y'all can download these. But what I also want to invite you to do, not everyone's brain works like this. Not everyone feels happy when they see a form to fill out. Some people, like, their brains kind of go, oh no, when they see a form and linear stuff like this. So I invite you to look at other ways for you to collect this information, right? It doesn't have to be in form like this. You might want to draw pictures. I've seen beautiful monographs. Have you seen the reishi monograph I used to have up actually for my students as I was teaching writing monograph? There's someone, I have to find it, doesn't have a linear brain. And so she creates these beautiful images for her monographs. The information is there. The important information and her experience is there. It's just, it's not there. So don't worry about if your brain doesn't like things. Anyway, all right. Yes. Yeah, it's a good idea, Bernard. And it's just, what I like to do with this is I like to show people this is the type of information that we are going to gather. And so some of you have been coming to plant explorations for years and years. And some of you are new, and that's all great. but you'll kind of get an experience during this type of a gathering in, again, how to collect that information. So we're going to collect that information on Astragalus. So the first thing that we want to do is we want to look at the name. So plants have common names. The common name of the plant we're working with today is Astragalus. Can you folks online tell me, is this backwards or forwards? Can you read that? I'm afraid that that is backwards. And I'm not entirely sure how to. It is forwards. Ah, Terry. Hi, Terry. Yay. Cool. That's good. Good. Okay. So Astragalus is one of the common names. Another common name for it is, forgive my pronunciation, Wang Qi, which translates to yellow leader. This is one of the superior tonic herbs of Chinese herbalism. And so in pinyin, this is the Chinese name for it, another common name, Astragalus, common name. And then another way that we identify plants is through their botanical names, botanical Latin. So botanical Latin has two names. We have a genus and a species. Right? So the genus is kind of like the last name of your family. I am a Sanchez by birth, and so there's a number of different Sanchezes. I am Julie Sanchez. So here we have the Astragalus genus has lots of species. There are thousands of different species of Astragalus. It's an abundant and widely spread plant. But it's important to recognize that the species that we use of Astragalus, there's only a very few species of Astragalus that we use medicinally. Most of them are toxic, right? So in Astragalus, we use Astragalus membranaceus. Whoopsie. Astragalus membranaceus. So this is the Latin name. It is important to know the correct names of your plants. If you have a little bit of information and you know that Astragalus is a fabulous plant, and you have your Southern California plant identification book and you go out into our mountains, you'll find Astragalus growing. And so with your little bit of information, you might go, yay, I found Astragalus, and you'll harvest that root and take it and make tea out of it and poison yourself or poison other people, because the Astragalus that grows here is toxic. So having correct information is really, really important. Being able to identify the plant is really, really important. This is the plant. We do have, there's another Astragalus, which is in common usage that we generally tend not to think of. And that is Astragalus, blanking on the species name, but the common name for the product that it makes. Actually, I'm going to ask you, does anyone know another compound? Do you know another compound that is made by a different species of Astragalus? I think I actually have it in the notes. Oh, no, I don't. I don't have it in the notes.
Where does this non-poisonous one grow?
In China. This is a Chinese plant, and it grows in China, in Asia. I have grown it here, but it needs very deep sandy soil because it's a taproot. So it needs really well draining, deep sandy, loose sandy soil so they can send those long roots down into the soil. So the other compound that's made by another species of Astragalus is a compound called gum tragacanth. And so it's a gum. Gums hold things together. And you most commonly see gum tragacanth in like making incense and things that you need to bind together like that. So that's another Astragalus. So Astragalus membranaceus. The other thing that I want you to learn to kind of think about when you're learning about the plant is the family name. So the family of Astragalus is the Fabaceae family. Fabaceae family, formerly Leguminosae. So that kind of gives you a hint as to what the family is, right? This is the pea and legume family. faba, sort of remember fava beans, right? And I'm sure there's a linguistic root there of faba and bean, and I don't know what it is. If you know, let me know. So the Fabaceae family, family with a lot of foods for us, a lot of foods and a lot of medicines. So that's the plant that we're looking at today. Now we know the specifics of the plant that we're looking at. And this is the tea that we're drinking. So this is Astragalus, properly a decoction. So this simmered, let's see, I put this in at 8 when I came in. So it simmered for about an hour and a half. Got quite strong and reduced, concentrated down. So we drove off some of the water, and that makes the constituents stronger. So one of the first things that we do when we have a tea is we're going to, you need some more tea, don't you? Is we're going to, Missy, hi, Missy.
I like to chew on these roots too.
Yes. They are really wonderful. In fact, let's talk about that. So I'm using the plant in a shredded form like this. Shredded form. This one comes either from Oshala or from Foster Farms in Vermont. But shredded root. This is really good if you're making a decoction, as I did, simmering the plant for a long period of time in water. How you will often find your astragalus is in a slice. If it simmers, it gets astragalus. The secret is in the sauce. If it simmers, it gets astragalus. Terry, totally. Soup, sauces, bone broths, etc. Beans, rice, anything that cooks for a long time. And like Terry said, yeah, if it's simmering for a long time, if it has water and heat, right? That's the thing. If it has water and heat, astragalus is going to want to go in there. And if you use these slices, if you are making soups, sauces, bone broths, etc., and especially rice or beans, then you're able to go out and extricate these from your batch after making it. If you use this, you won't. You will have destroyed all of your beans. I've done that before. It's sad. So don't do that. And as Kelly said, these are also kind of nice if you like to chew on things. Or if you just want some and you forgot to make some and you're just like, I need some astragalus, you can just chew on the roots. It's like chewing on a popsicle stick. It tastes like chewing on a popsicle stick, right?
But
it's just
sweet.
It's sweet and bland and mild.
But you can get those slices at like the Chinese or Korean market.
Very abundant because it's such a popular tonic herb in China. It's very, very it's very easy to find. Being a taproot. Taproots reach way down into the soil and they grab stuff and pull stuff into themselves. It does have a tendency to concentrate stuff. And so if it's grown in funky soil, it's going to have funky chemistry. And this is one of the cautions of buying things that are not organically grown. Some plants, it doesn't matter quite as much if they're organic or not, but astragalus is one of those that if you can find it organic, it really is better to find it organically grown because it does matter, because it does tend to accumulate stuff from the soil. And while organic certification does not cover a lot of problems with soil and problems of purity, nonetheless, it is a way to kind of assess for quality. But anyway, so we have the sticks. We're going to simmer them for a long time in water. It's one of the keys to medicine making with astragalus is it likes water. So this is just our decoction. And when you're working with a plant for the first time, or when you're working with a plant with a focus on understanding that plant, then what we want to do is have the plant just by itself. No other flavors, no other herbs. We're going to make a nice strong decoction. We're going to make it as a really strong therapeutic dosage, and then we're going to taste it just by itself. Before we taste it, we're going to breathe it in. So what I like to do is first Terry says, easy to grow, but takes a couple of years to get a good size root. Terry, oh, you'll be so sad about this. I had one growing in my apothecary garden. And it was a little one. It was a baby. I'd gotten it, I think, from Richo up north, and it was growing and it was happy. It was fine. And I had new students coming in and working in the garden, and one of them pulled it out because they thought it was a weed. So they plucked out I think it was about a year and a half old, and it had been holding on, but It didn't hold on after that. It made me very sad, and now I'm crying. I'm not. I have an eyelash in my eye or something. Yeah, so I know it was very sad. Yeah, so easy to grow. If you have soil, we have really clay, dense, heavy soil. And so plants that do long taproots generally tend to be pissy in our soil. It's too wet, it's too compact, they just get annoyed by it. So you have to really amend the soil a lot and just keep them happy. Okay, so when we breathe in the astragalus, we can tell, we don't even need to have a chemical breakdown, a breakdown of the constituents. We can tell that there aren't a lot of volatile compounds, right? There's the chemistry of astragalus doesn't include essential oils. You can tell that just by smelling, right? And what does it smell like to you? Bread. Yeah, very starchy. Very starchy. Can you tell the plant family from it?
Oh, like lima beans.
Like lima beans. It smells like bean or pea, kind of.
Yeah, pea soup.
Pea soup, pea water, PEA. Yeah, definitely a food smell to it. It smells like food. It smells rich and starchy and nourishing. Wrigley and Long Beach had sandy loam. Oh, yeah. You have rocky soil now. Oh, plus you have like snow. Josie, hi Josie. Sweet hay. Yeah, sweet hay.
Oh,
Yeah.
you walk into a barn.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, sweet, nourishing, lovely. The chemistry of sweet hay is actually specific compounds called coumarins that are in a lot of plants that have that sweet hay smell. There's very specifically the chemistry of sweet hay. Yeah. Okay, so so maybe a long tube to grow, and Joe Hollis used to grow Chinese yams like that. Oh, my this is always apparently going to be just a chatty thing as we all kind of come back together again. So I'm just going to let that be okay. My daughter-in-law lives in North Carolina now, and I'm thinking of going to the Blue Ridge. There's an herb conference in the beginning of June in Asheville, and I want to go by Joel Hollis's gardens and see them and see how they're coming along with restoring his library in the apothecary. All right, back to astragalus. So we've ascertained that it smells starchy. It does not have aromatic compounds in it. The smell doesn't always agree with the flavor, right? Have you ever smelled something and thought, well, that smells relatively innocuous, and then you take a big sip thinking that it's going to taste just fine, and the flavor is significantly different than the scent? That gives us also some information. So we're going to smell it and then taste it. And there is quite a lot of agreement between the scent and the taste. So when we taste it, we're bringing it into our mouth and kind of holding it in our mouth. I hope those people are okay. Be okay. We also want to feel what the tissues of the mouth do in response to the tea. The tissues of our mouth, there's a lot of vigilance there, right? This is the point of entry of stuff coming into our body. So all of the oral mucosa, the tongue, the throat, all of this has just a tremendous amount of, hi, Cynthia, good morning. There's a tremendous amount of awareness and vigilance here because this is the point where your body has the option of saying, oh no, this is not coming into my body and spitting it out, or saying, yes, this is coming into my body and swallowing it, right? So we can use that awareness and vigilance of the oral mucosa. This is also an area where the herbs can come in direct contact with the inner tissue of our body, and we can see what that feels like, what that looks like. So we're going to take the tea into our mouth and just hold it there and just experience What do the tissues of the mouth do in response to the astragalus? So I taste that starchiness. There's definitely starchiness, which is an important part of the chemistry of the plant. So I'm going to write, this is the taste. I taste starch. What do you taste?
I get kind of like a tingling on my tongue.
Tingly tongue. Tingly tongue. There's definitely a lot of astringency, of tightness. So it's starchy, so it's kind of thick. And at the same time, there's an astringent quality. So for folks who are not familiar with the concept of astringency happens when compounds bind to proteins in the skin, the proteins of the mucous membranes of the oral mucosa are particularly responsive to this. But all of the tissues in the body tend to respond to the presence of, what are the chemical compounds that are astringent? Folks, I know you folks know this. I know you know this too. But I know you people online know this because you people have been in my classes before. So what's the chemistry of astringency? There you go. Yeah, tannins. So tannins are in a larger class of compounds called flavonoids. And flavonoid chemistry is some of the most important chemistry of plants. There's a lot of really important chemistry of plants, but flavonoid chemistry is pretty tremendous. Flavonoids have the ability to strengthen tissues, to improve the structural health of tissues. There's thousands of different flavonoids, and they work on different types of tissues in the body. But generally, if you see in a list of compounds in a plant, the flavonoids are present, irrespective of what type of flavonoids those are, you know there's going to be some tissues that are going to be like stronger and happier and more resilient. Now, tannins are particularly large flavonoids that really like to grab onto surface proteins. And so so we can experience them in the mouth if we can feel that. We know there's some flavonoid chemistry there. There's likely tannins, and we feel that dry, tight, astringed feel to the tissues. That is the tannins binding to the proteins, and by binding to those proteins, they make the proteins thicker. They kind of close the gaps in the proteins. They make it more structurally more sound. They improve and thicken the structural nature of those tissues. Andrea, yeah, tannins. So we use tannins when we want to close the gates of tissues. You'll notice that when you have an astringent compound in the oral mucosa, that the mouth dries up, right? We've closed those gates of the salivary glands. And so there's some dryness there because because all of those tissues have stopped secreting fluids. Now, I see your question, and I'll answer that because that's a good question. There's a reaction to that by the oral mucosa because the mucous membranes are meant to be moist. We have salivary glands whose job is to keep these mucous membranes moist. And so we get that astringency, and then quite often, a little bit after that, we'll get an increase in salivation as the salivary glands seek to return some moisture to the tissues. But you'll feel that astringency there. So how do we use that medicinally, therapeutically? We use that to when tissues are leaky or open or not being an effective barrier. So what that would look like in skin, Andrea, would be if we have wounds, right? If we have a cut, then we can use tannins to close that cut and help to stop the bleeding. If we have a rash, red, hot, inflamed rash, right? That shows that the surface, that tissue is not an effective barrier. It's been damaged and there's redness, there's inflammation, puffiness. And so we can use tannins on a burn to reduce that redness, reduce the heat, help to kind of tighten that tissue back down again. And so we see that in the use of like black tea and green tea topically for treatment of sunburns. We see that for people using tea bags on their eyes to stop the puffiness of the tissues. We see that with myrrh is quite often something that you'll see in toothpaste. And the reason that myrrh is put into toothpaste or into oral care products is because it is one of the strongest astringents. And so it tightens puffy, maybe bleeding or just puffy gums, right? Tightens those gums and firms them. So it can be good for the skin if the skin is showing that looseness that it needs to respond. If you have skin that's very tight and not fluid, not resilient, then maybe that would not be the thing to put on that skin, right? It just depends on the where the skin is, what type of skin it is, what's going on with that skin. Does it need that tonification? But you can look at it and ask that question. Does this skin need this effect? Because it'll tell you right away. You'll see it and you'll go, yeah, I could use some tannins here. So we have flavonoids in Astragalus. There aren't a lot of tannins. It feels like tannins, so it tells us that they're kind of large flavonoid compounds, but they're just binding to those proteins. And so we know that there's flavonoid chemistry there. So we know that there's starch chemistry there. Those starches, we taste that, right? So we've tasted the starches. Starches in, what are starches called? Long chains of starches in plant medicine are called, there's 3 primary classes of therapeutic compounds in Astragalus. So we've identified one by that astringency. We've identified a second one by the starchiness, and those compounds are called polysaccharides. Terry, you get 20 more points. Polysaccharides, long chains, poly, of sugars, saccharides, long chains of sugars. Polysaccharide chemistry is really important in immune system response. So we see polysaccharides abundantly in a lot of the immune tonic herbs that we use in medicinal mushrooms, astragalus, echinacea, various different compounds like that, aloe vera. So polysaccharides, long chains of sugars, they're starches, and we can taste that starch there. So we'll go into that in a little bit. The third area of, hi, Mickey got it too. Mickey, you also get 20 points. The third class of compounds is evident when we take some of the tea and pour it into a container and we shake it up. And if we shake it up, we see foam. If we see foam, that shows the presence of compounds called saponins. Saponins are soap-like compounds that are somewhat abundant in some plants. And saponins have very important effects on regulation of inflammation and reducing oxidation. And in other plants, saponins can be raw materials for the manufacture of steroidal compounds, steroidal hormones, and other compounds. So not in Astragalus. In Astragalus, primarily, the saponins are responsible for the anti-inflammatory and antioxidant effects that are present in its therapeutic effects on the cardiovascular system and the circulatory system. So flavonoids, polysaccharides, and saponins. are the chemistry of astragalus. By and large, there are lots of other compounds, and even within each of these, there are a number of different flavonoids, a number of different polysaccharides, and a number of different saponins. But generally, the flavonoids are going to improve tissue elasticity and strength, have an anti-inflammatory effect on the body, and help with immune regulation. The polysaccharides, the starches, are for immune strengthening and nourishing in the body, and then the saponins for the effects we've already talked about. So then what do we use astragalus for? In Chinese herbalism, there are a couple of different reasons for use of astragalus. The primary reason is that it is one of the premier immune tonics. We take astragalus for enhancement of what's called the Wei Qi. The Wei Qi in Chinese herbalism, I preface this by saying I am not a Chinese herbalist, so you'll get a more accurate and complex and complete explanation of what the Wei Qi is if you actually ask a Chinese herbalist. But as a Western herbalist has a little bit of information about Chinese herbalism, the Wei Qi is what the concept of the immune system in Chinese herbalism, which is an energetic protective layer that exists just underneath your skin, covers your whole body, head to toe. It's said to protect the body as with a jade screen. So it's a jade screen that just protects us from outside influences. So external influences in Chinese herbalism are external pathogens, external things that are coming in, breaching the Wei Qi, breaching that protective mechanism, and coming in and invading our body. So bacterial, viral, fungal, other types of infectious conditions. And so astragalus strengthens that Wei Qi, strengthens and protects us against those external influences. So we don't use it generally for treatment of acute infectious conditions, right? If we have an acute cold or a flu, we don't necessarily want to reach for astragalus, but we want to reach for it to strengthen that before we get the infection, before we get the pathogen entering into our body. We take astragalus in order to strengthen our resistance, to strengthen our defense. That is the best way of using astragalus. Now, another reason that we use astragalus is for general increase in vitality. It's used for people who have chronic fatigue, just general low energy, low vitality, particularly younger people with low vitality. So one of the things that people quite often go to automatically in Chinese herbalism for increased vitality is the ginsengs, right? The ginseng family of adaptogens. And those are generally more appropriate for elders, where astragalus is more appropriate for younger people, for overworked people, and also for people who tend to be kind of cold and dry. The constitutional state would be someone who just doesn't have a lot of that kind of vital warmth and juiciness, right? They're just kind of this cold, dry person that may be as an effect of a disease state that they're recovering from, or it may be just kind of how they're built, and that makes them more susceptible to cold and dry conditions. But irrespective of that, those people who tend to be more cold, those people who tend to be more dry, are going to feel better when they take astragalus as a therapeutic agent, because it's going to give them that increased vitality, that increased warmth and resilience, and energy. Astragalus is also a very important tonic, a plant that strengthens and nourishes a number of different systems in the body. So we tend to think of it more for the immune system, but it's also extremely important and heavily studied as a cardiac tonic. For chronic cardiac deficiency and weakness, it is one of the primary plants that we can reach for with that, taken over a period of time to strengthen and build the health of the heart and the circulatory system. The cool thing is that that's part of that flavonoid chemistry. That's part of the saponin chemistry, that whole reducing inflammation and strengthening tissues. And we see as an effect of some opportunistic infections, we see long-term inflammation, we see long-term deterioration of circulatory and cardiac health. And so this is a plant that can improve and strengthen and protect against that damage and possibly even reverse that damage. We don't know because that's early on, but it is something that I have been reaching for regularly. It is a liver tonic and a kidney tonic also, and so it's very nice for helping to improve liver function. By improving liver function, that seems to be one of the mechanisms by which it also helps with regulation of blood fats, of cholesterol and triglycerides. Again, kind of pointing to its effects on cardiac health. So that is believed to be kind of held in liver function. And it's one of my favorite plants to use for people who have kidney weakness with that kind of dry, cold, deficient condition. The kidneys filter the blood, and so they have all the blood goes through all those tiny little blood vessels in the kidneys. And so if there's a lot of dryness directly affects the kidneys, which are important for fluid regulation in the body. And if we think also of the fact that the kidneys are filtering all of that blood, all of those little blood vessels need to be strong and healthy and elastic. So the therapeutic effects of flavonoids on the circulatory system is also going to affect the kidneys. So I like using Astragalus for someone who is needing kind of that strengthening and nourishment of the kidneys, bringing that moisture in there and improving that circulation.
One time my acupuncturist gave me a mixture of herbs. She was treating kidney weakness. She made a kidney tonic, and I recognized the Astragalus in there.
Oh, just the slices looking in there. You're like,
I know what you are.
Nice. See,
Yeah.
That's why you want to chew on your roots, people, so you can identify things like that. By improving the elasticity of those vascular walls, we also see a positive effect using Astragalus for people who have elevated blood pressure. The wind is kicking up and the rain is about to hit. We're just waiting for the rain to come in. It's like any moment it's just going to go pow. I know it's yeah. What was I saying? Blood pressure. So again, just talking about that elasticity of vascular walls and how that's other ways that shows. So again, all of this that we're looking at takes time. We're looking at changing systems and how they're working and changing the structural integrity of tissues. And so all of that type of change takes time, takes a regular dosage of a plant over a period of time in order to initiate that change. Sometimes we can take a plant and have an immediate effect, right? If you want to drink some thyme tea to open up those bronchioles, you drink that tea and boom, right away, those bronchioles are open, right? We're causing that immediate response. So sometimes we can have a rapid response from plants, and that's great. This is not a rapid response plant. This is a plant that we take over a period of time to change structures and change how tissues and systems are working. And so we take it over a period of time regularly. Because of that, it is nice to think of the plant as a food. Oh, and Mickey has the sun over there you're in Wisconsin, Michigan, one of the W or M states over there, Montana, Missouri, over there. Oh, you're with Jim. You're Michigan. I think it's Michigan. So yay for sun. Yay for sun. You have our sun. So using Astragalus as food. So when we're talking about adding the slices to your foods, Terry had said, if it, what did you say? That was a great phrase that Terry said. If it simmers, it gets astragalus. So yeah, anything that you're going to be cooking for a long period of time, you can just throw a handful of astragalus in there. Therapeutic dosages range from 7 to 14 grams. No, that's wrong. 4 to 7 grams daily. For a 140-pound person is a recent study that was done they said that the optimal dosage for enhanced immune activity is 4 to 7 grams a day, which would be about 4 slices, 3 to 4 slices, depending on the size. So 3 to 4 slices a day would be enough for a therapeutic dosage. Michigan. So Michigan. Yeah, I was right. So if you have significant weakness of your systems, say you're recovering from a condition, you're recovering from a viral infection, say, for example, just off the top of my head, you're fine, but you're recovering from that, and you have some weakness, you have some kind of long-term stuff, then what I would do is I would put it into my soup or stew or beans or rice or whatever, and have a serving of that every single day. How much? Well, a serving where you're getting 3 to 4 slices equivalent. So if you make a pot of soup that has 10 cups of soup in it, then you're going to want to put about 40 slices, which would be about 3 or 4 ounces of roots in that pot of soup. And so that would equate to, every time you would have a pot of soup, you'd have about the equivalent of 4 slices. If you're going to have 2 pots of soup a day, you can put, the equivalent of 2 slices and just have 2 pots of soup. So that's how you'd want to kind of portion that out. Now that is getting the strong therapeutic dosage. You may not need that strong therapeutic dosage. You might just be a person who wants to generally strengthen their immune system, strengthen their cardiac system, strengthen all of those systems. Just take astragalus because it increases vitality and health. Then throw it into your food and just eat it when you eat the food. How much do you get? Some days you might get a lot and some days you get a little. And that's fine because you are having it as food. You're having it as nourishment. And nourishment, by its nature, kind of fluctuates. It flows. And sometimes we're going to have a lot and sometimes we're going to have a little bit. It's like having greens or having, dark purple veggies. You're not going to have, likely, a precise exact amount every single day. Don't worry about it. Have them in your diet. Have them abundantly. Some days you're going to have just 4 salads, and that's going to be great. Sometimes every cup of whatever you eat is going to have astragalus in it. That's going to be fine. So it depends on why you're taking it, what the dosage is. It also depends on who you are and what your health is and what your sensitivity is to foods and so many other factors. But those are some ideas. You can make a tincture out of astragalus. However, if we look at the primary chemistry of astragalus, we have flavonoids. Flavonoids love water. Saponins love water. And polysaccharides. Polysaccharides only like water, and polysaccharides do not like alcohol. So if you are going to make a tincture of astragalus, you need to keep the alcohol level very, very low. So I make mine at 25 to 30%, depends on what I feel like in that batch. 25 to 30%, no more than 30%. Because if we go upward of like 40%, then the alcohol in the tincture can damage the polysaccharides in the plant material. And we don't want that. Those are some of the important medicine. They're not the only medicine. So if you do have a high alcohol astragalus tincture, you're going to have medicinal effects. What you won't have is the polysaccharides. You'll still have the flavonoids, you'll have the saponins, but you won't have the polysaccharides. But if you're going to take it, why not have it anyway? The downside to a tincture is you need to take kind of a lot of it, because given that the alcohol content is so low, most of this is water. It's just a really strong decoction stabilized by alcohol. In fact, that's actually one of my favorite ways of making a tincture, is to make a tea, reduce it down, make a very strong decoction. And I do that by I'll take 3 or 4 ounces of the roots and put it into a pot, pour 2 cups of water over that, simmer for a long time, take that out, put in some more fresh roots, pour that same water over, simmer for 30 to 60 minutes, and then I'm going to throw them both together and decoct that way down. You get a very dark. It'll be like, as dark as this wood, a very rich, dark decoction, concentrated decoction that way. Then you can take that, and to that add 25% alcohol. Just add the alcohol to it. You've concentrated it way down. Now you're going to dilute it a little bit by throwing that alcohol, but that's going to be your preservative. So if you make 3 cups of a decoction and add 1 cup of pure alcohol, we use 95% alcohol, then that's going to equal 25% alcohol. We've got 25% of the total volume of the finished product is alcohol, right? 3 cups of decoction, 25% alcohol. So that's what we call a stabilized decoction. We haven't extracted using the alcohol because the alcohol isn't a valuable solvent. Water is the valuable solvent when it comes to Astragalus. We're using the alcohol as a preservative, and so we throw that in there. You could also just tincture, making a standard tincture, just using a menstruum that is 25% alcohol, 75% water. So you could do that too. Whichever way. I like to use the hot water because hot water is best. Julie, is it normal to feel wired on Astragalus? Well, Astragalus increases vitality, increases energy. It is used specifically for fatigue and low energy. It's not I don't feel it as stimulating. It may be normal for you to feel wired on Astragalus, and that's super valuable and helpful information for you to know. If your body feels wired on Astragalus, it's normal to feel wired on Astragalus. So trust your body and believe what your body is telling you. So, but also sometimes you're wired because of something else and you just happen to drink some Astragalus. So you want to test it a couple of times. And if it happens every single time, then yeah, it is totally normal for your body to feel wired on Astragalus. You can ask why that is. Sometimes that's because your body just really likes it. And if that feels really good, then that's great. It's showing that your body just really responds to that increased vitality of Astragalus, and you may want to play with that. If that feels uncomfortable, there may be an underlying negative response that you are experiencing that is causing a stress response, causing an adrenal response to your body, where your body goes, not really wild about this thing, don't really like this in here, and so we get increased production of adrenal hormones, stress hormones, because the body is not really happy about that, about the Astragalus being in the system. We can perceive that as kind of feeling wired. We can even kind of seek that out, even though it's not good for us. We see that a lot in people who are trying to go off of foods that they're allergic to. If you have a food that you're allergic to and you think, I could never live without that food, wheat, for example, right? So you give up wheat for a month, you don't eat anything but wheat, and then you test it and you take wheat, and all of a sudden you can feel wired, not because wheat is stimulating, sorry about that, but because your system, having been gluten-free for a month, had gluten come into it and it initiated a stress response. The body goes, oh, damn, I thought we were done with that. I thought we were doing that. And that can be one of the reasons why people continue to eat foods that they know are not healthy for them, that are not good for them, because they get that wired response. And we perceive that, we interpret that as energizing, right? Our body kind of likes that, even though it isn't healthy, it isn't good for us. It still is a jolt. It's interesting feelings, right? So, so there's a lot of stuff to kind of look at when you are feeling, if you feel wired, if you feel energized by astragalus, looking at what that is. But if it happens repeatedly, it is totally normal for your body to feel wired on astragalus. Okay? And that could be good and it could be bad. So look at that. It isn't a common allergen, but bodies are complex and immune systems are kind of weird sometimes. Let's see. What else do I have about astragalus for you? Do you have any questions about this? That was a great question. Eyes open. There have been a tremendous amount of clinical studies on the use of astragalus. There's a huge body of research that you can go online and look up. When you're looking up research for something, search by the botanical name. It's another reason to know the botanical name. Search for Astragalus membranaceus, and you're going to get better returns on your searches than looking for astragalus root. Marketing, stupid internet stuff will likely just use the common name. And good research papers will likely use the botanical name. So it just kind of weeds out some of the sources that can confuse things. Flavor-wise, what pairs well with astragalus? It is sweet and bland. It tastes like one of my favorite descriptions of what astragalus decoction tastes like from a student was, it tastes like macaroni water from the water left over from making pasta, right? It's just mildly sweet and starchy and super neutral. That's the lovely thing about it, Josie, is that it'll go into anything. So one of my favorite things to do with astragalus is to make that very strong decoction, just reduce it way down, throw it on a back burner and just let it simmer for a couple of hours just to make it really concentrated. Cool that down and pour it into ice cube trays and freeze it. You put like 3 to 4 hours into making this. You know, you don't want to do that every single day that you're making your tea. But if you freeze it, now you have a very strong concentrated decoction in approximately 1 ounce little cubes. You can take those cubes and throw them into a cup of hot water, right? You have 3 ounces of water and you throw a 1 ounce cube of a reduced decoction in there. You have 4 ounces of nice, strong astragalus root decoction. You can just drink there, or you can pop it into your soup, or into your beans, or into your other tea, or into your dog's water dish, or into your hot chocolate, or however else you want to do it. So you've extracted it, you have a relatively neutral flavor, and you can throw that in. So that's a really handy way of doing it, and that's what I generally end up doing, just because I really appreciate when I am a very busy person that past Julie has taken 4 hours. There's the rain. Past Julie has taken 4 hours to make a bag of astragalus ice cubes, and they're in the freezer, and I open up the freezer and I say, thank you, Past Julie, for making those ice cubes, and I can just take the ice cubes and throw them into something. So that's another way to prepare them. Let's see. I think I got everything that I wanted to say about astragalus. Do I have a good astragalus soup recipe? Well, traditionally it's used in chicken soups, or think of bone broths. That's a very traditional. So if you eat animals, then a chicken soup or a bone broth is good. If not, I really like it in miso broth. So I'll make a astragalus decoction, generally I'll use my ice cubes. And I make miso. You have to be careful with heat with miso. Miso is a living food, and so you don't want to be boiling it. You would never put your miso in when you're making your astragalus, right? Because the miso would be dead by the time you finish that. So you can make your astragalus broth and add miso, some sliced green onions, some little chunks of tofu in there, and some ginger and garlic and all of that. Have a lovely astragalus miso broth with veggies would be that sounds actually really tasty.
Yeah.
With the wind and the rain out there, I totally want some astragalus miso broth. Oh, you could like when you go get pho, melt some astragalus ice and put it into a little bottle. I'm totally gonna do this. Get my big old bowl of pho and just pour my astragalus in there. That's a brilliant idea. I like that idea. I'm gonna do that. Also, I need to get pho. Right? Yes. Oh, that's so good. Yes, Shadi. You don't want to take it when you're fighting a virus. Yeah, when you have an active infection in your body, that's not the time to take astragalus. In Chinese herbalism, it's felt that you are feeding, just as you're feeding yourself, right? Because this is a starchy food. It's a food that you are feeding the pathogen, the external pathogen, as you are feeding yourself. So we generally take astragalus beforehand in order to protect against the virus or bacteria, or we take it afterwards for recovery from the infection. But you're absolutely right. We don't generally take it at the same time. All right. So there you go. Astragalus. I hope you go find some astragalus and play with it and see how you feel. It's a lovely thing. As you do that, take notes. Start keeping a journal of your experiences with plants, and go back, as Kelly was saying, go back and add to it. Every time you work with those plants, just add in more of your notes. You're going to end up with a document that is going to be tremendously helpful for you, for future you, to formulate with and to understand how your body feels with that plant, because ultimately it is about relationship. It's about your relationship in your body with that plant. And that relationship isn't something that you're going to find in a monograph or in a book or in the tradition or anywhere else. You are only going to find that relationship when you are in relationship with the plant. In the same way, you're only going to find out what a relationship with another person is by being in that relationship with that person. And there's going to be some people you don't want to be in a relationship with, and that's fine. And there's going to be plants that you don't want to be in a relationship with, and that's fine. There's going to be plants that someone is going to say, this is my favorite plant in the world, and I'm excited to introduce them to you, just like that person that someone said, you and this person, you're going to get along so well, and you can't stand the sight of them. That's okay. All of that is okay. You get to decide what your relationship is with anything. So if you try astragalus and you think, I don't know what the hell Julie was going on about, that stuff is nasty, that's okay. And now you know what your relationship with astragalus is. And you can cross astragalus off of the list and go on to something else, because plant chemistry is redundant and plant actions are redundant, and there's always going to be alternatives to any plant. And anyone who says otherwise is marketing to you. They're not giving you accurate information. So go make soup. It is time to make soup, Sherry, because it's such soup making weather. Terry, thanks. It feels so good to be back. And after the rain comes, I had a number of people who are like, yeah, I'm not going out to the class today because it's going to be raining and I don't want to be stuck out in there. So we'll be back every Monday here on YouTube. I'm so glad that you were able to join me. And I will see you next week. And next week's plant, and I'll post the calendar here. Next week's class is going to be citrus. We're going to be talking about citrus as a therapeutic herb. So we'll be talking about lemon peel and orange peel and ginger, and not ginger because that's not a citrus, and grapefruit and lime. So citrus peel, the fruit, the seed, the difference in the chemistry of all of them, and how we would use all of them for nourishment and healing. Christy, oh, how good to see your name, Christy. Thank you. Catherine, thank you so much. I know I'm happy to be here too. So love you all. Come see me if you have a chance to, and I will see you again next Wednesday. All right, bye-bye.